Welcome, everyone, to our webinar called Smart Digital Parenting, Navigating Screens with Children and Teens for this year, 2025 Safer Internet Day. My name is Kerry Gallagher. I am a school assistant principal. I'm a mom of two teens. I'm a teacher, a high school teacher, and I also serve as education director for Connect Safely. And joining me today, I'm so thrilled, is my friend Mikki.
Hey, it's good to be here again, Kerry. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited, as always, to be part of this conversation because, most importantly, I'm National PTA's PTA Connected Ambassador. But like you, I have many roles, right? I'm a former business teacher, I'm a child advocate, I'm a PTA member, but I spend the majority of my time working with business leaders and also speaking to students about how to advocate for themselves and others. So I'm very passionate about having the conversation around how we can keep our children, how we can keep our teens safe online and have them practicing these digital healthy habits. And from a national PTA perspective, right, we provide awesome programming to parents, to families, to leaders that help really start these positive, practical, proactive, ongoing conversations at home as soon as possible so that we're all in this together.
Thanks so much, Mikki. It is really good to speak with you again. And Connect Safely is really grateful for the PTA partnership that makes great programming like this possible. Let's get right into our conversation so our audience can benefit from some of the knowledge in the room. Let's start with a chat about digital wellness.
Love that. I love that. I have a couple questions. So, starting around fifth grade, parents start to see their kids spending time with friends and on screens more. Is that something to worry about as compared to in-person time with their friends?
Yeah, great question. We start to see our kids spending time either walking around our house on their phones, just kind of carrying their friends with them, or they may even close themselves off into a room or in their bedroom. Um, we also see this in a few different ways. Sometimes they're on video while they're gaming together. They might be playing a video game and looking at each other on a screen. They might be doing homework together while they're video chatting, or they could just be kind of talking and socializing. Um, Ideally, these conversations on screens are just an extension of their in-person relationships from the school day, from their sports teams, or from their activities or club programs. They're just kind of friends that they see in person that they just want more time with. It's completely age appropriate from fifth grade to especially eighth or ninth grade for them to really want more of their time spent with their friends than with their family. That is a totally normal socialization process that they go through at that time, and screens make it easier for them. I don't know about you, Mikki, but I remember being on the phone with that cord, like hidden around a corner in the kitchen from my parents, whispering into the phone so that I could spend more time talking to my friends and less time talking to my parents. So just knowing that that's normal, I think is helpful for us to remember. It's just that they're able to use a different type of technology than what we used. We can kind of cheerfully and consistently join in. So sometimes I'll just pop into the background of my child's video conversation and say, "Hi, who are we talking to?" As a matter of fact, one of my daughters was brushing her teeth while she was on a video call last night in a bathroom. And I just popped in and I was like, "Oh, I'm just coming to say goodnight to everybody who's on the call." And so they all said, "Hi." They call me Mommy Gallagher, my daughter's friends. So they were like, "Hi, Mommy Gallagher." And I was like, "Oh, good night. I hope you all have a really good sleep." And they're like, "Thanks, you too." And that was also a very gentle signal to my daughter that it was time for her to hang up the call because it was time for her to go to bed as well. So there's a way to kind of intervene while keeping it cheerful and also continuing to build a relationship with your child's friends, because that's an important relationship for you to show that you care about too.
Yeah, I love that. I love your example of the 6 foot. Well, in my mind, it's the 6 foot cord, right? The one that can stretch as long as possible, and the extension cord too. And one of the programs that I talk to parents about within the PTA Connected program is our program Ready Tech Go. And that really focuses on screen readiness, because I've found that traveling many places and talking to many different parent leaders, parents and families, that there is no right time for one collective right time for kids to be ready for screens. So I love that you compare it to kind of the technology that we had. It allows them to have the conversation again and start the conversation of when are their children ready for screens, but then you just with your stories just make it sound so relatable, how you kind of enter into the conversation just very casually, and the kids the friends know you and everything, and it just becomes a natural thing instead of like the rap on the door, it's time to get off, the whatever technology we refer to at the time. So I really love that. I have one more question, and that is, should our kids be doing homework while they're on a video call with friends? I hear this a lot. And is that going to impact their focus, attention, and ability to get the homework done well?
I think it's natural for us to want to collaborate with other people on work, especially when it's challenging work. I know that in my workday, there's really no project that I do that isn't something that I'm either running drafts by people, or there's several meetings or conversations in which we're kind of crafting the vision together. Even just for this recording, Mikki, there were lots of people that helped us kind of plan and put it together and talk about topics. So if our kids are looking to collaborate on things like homework, I think we want to acknowledge that, understand that that's a valuable opportunity for them, and then be willing to have kind of ongoing conversations with them about when collaboration is acceptable for homework and when it's not, based on what it's likely the learning goal of the activity is. So for instance, if they're doing math homework and they're doing it with a friend who's on screen, the teacher certainly wants them to feel their own individual mastery of how to do those math problems. So are they truly collaborating with their friend and talking through the math problem step by step together? Or are they splitting up like, I'll do the first five, you do the second five, and then we'll give each other the answers? There's a difference in those two strategies. And the first, where they're going through it step by step together, is going to help them learn because they're not just doing the math, but they're talking about it out loud. The second example, where they're splitting up the problems and then swapping answers, is not necessarily going to help them learn because they're only getting half as much practice as what the teacher assigned. So there's some nuance to this, and our kids don't automatically have that kind of inner calibration for what's acceptable and what's not unless we teach it to them through conversations. And if they make a mistake in terms of collaboration versus academic integrity, oftentimes it's not intentional. It's just because they haven't developed those skills yet. And so they rely on us to help them with those conversations. And if you're not sure as a parent, there's nothing wrong with emailing the teacher and asking. Like, I'm finding that my child and her friends who are also in your class are doing their homework while they're on FaceTime together. What do you think of that? Have you shared with them what your standard is for collaboration so that I can help reinforce that on my end? I think when teachers and parents feel like they're on the same page, it's better support for the kids.
I totally agree with that. And as always during our conversations, I'm taking notes so that I can take these on the road with me. But from that statement involving the teacher, right? That's such a nice way, because I think sometimes all adults, I think we're all guilty of this once in a while, but we think we have to have all the answers. And so, again, bringing in the teacher to be able to ask questions if you're not sure is just another example of when we talk about not only having those ongoing conversations at home, right? But we have a bridge between home and school. So, bringing in teachers. I love the differentiation in strategies when doing the homework. Is this a collaborative effort? Or are we trying to get the work done maybe twice as fast or a little bit faster, but watering down that learning? And especially with an example like math, I know math is about practicing, 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 and really learning the formulas. So again, that nuance I think is so good. And just the overall question of being on a video call with friends while you're doing work. We talk, National PTA and through PTA Connected, we talk about role modeling a lot and positive role modeling. And the truth is, kids see their parents and teachers and whatnot on calls where they're being collaborative. And so to say no to that, right, is is not the role model we're teaching. So thank you for sharing, what's acceptable and what may not be, but specifically that strategy is this true collaboration? Is this something where we're walking through it together? Or, you know, students are going to be students. Are we just trying to split the work? So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, these were great questions about kind of the wellness and the navigating things kind of ethically. I'm wondering if we have some topics that are about some of the topics that are more concerning, like scams and things that our kids can encounter that worry us as parents.
It's like you're reading my mind, Kerry. We do, because in addition to the digital habits, right, and our programs around the online safety and everything, security, data privacy, things like that are very important. So, my question that I have actually about scams are, we're seeing news stories lately meant to inform us about scams that some parents find really scary. Young teens or even our tweens are tricked into sharing nude and compromising photos, right? Then they end up a victim of sextortion, this term that we keep hearing. So the question really is, what can parents who already feel overwhelmed with all these online safety topics, what can those parents do to help protect their kids when it comes to things like this?
Yeah, yeah. Great question and a really important one. First, I think it's important to define what sextortion is. It's a sextortion. The term is used in law enforcement, and it's a federal crime in which the perpetrator either acquires or creates compromising digital material, which is often nude images or images of compromising body parts in which the victim is depicted. Sometimes those images are taken by the victim who's kind of duped into that situation or forced into that situation, and sometimes they're created using like AI or one thing for parents to keep in mind is that it's okay to talk about this in a preventative way. So bring this up to your kids before they encounter a situation where either their friend has been in the midst of this, or they hear about something happening to someone they know at school, or it potentially happens to them and they haven't been warned about these scenarios. It's a good idea to let them know what it is. Let them know that for you as their parent, because you love them so much, it's a little bit scary and awkward to talk about. And that no matter what happens, if they have a friend that it happens to and their friend's afraid and tells them, or if it happens to them, that someone's asking for these images and they don't know how to handle it, or if it happens to them that someone says that they have those images of them. For any reason and they're not sure what to do, that they can always come to you. And you, firstly, will always believe them, that you will not freak out, that you'll say that you will thank them for coming to them, and that you will help them. And the best way to help them, if this ever happens, is to first tell them that you love them and that you believe them. And then, secondly, to ask them to share kind of any information that they can. And then you're going to work with them on developing a strategy for who they're going to contact for help. So it might be appropriate to contact the school if this part of the nuance of the situation is that the perpetrator is going to threaten to contact the school. You may want to contact the adults of other children who might be involved if that's the case. And it's okay to contact like the FBI, because this is a federal crime and it isn't like you're bothering them, or it isn't like you're going around or above anybody's heads to do that. It's okay to contact them for help, and they can help talk you through it. And then if you, once you've done all those things with your child's permission, there is a great website called takeitdown.org where they can help you find the images that are in question and work with you and the platforms where the images might be published to get them taken down so that they're no longer existing online. And they'll partner with you to do those things. So, It's not an easy topic to talk about. It's something I'm actually really passionate about because there are solutions when this happens, and we can help our kids, and they can feel like they can come to us when they're in kind of a situation that feels really scary and overwhelming for a teen or a tween. So it's important for parents to be informed and to feel empowered when something like this happens.
I totally agree, informed and empowered, because sometimes, right, I'm talking about uh, uh, these things that these resources that can help, and we're talking about like delving into the online, but I get parents that, pull me to the side and ask about the very serious topics like this. So thank you for giving us the definition, just reinforcing, right, this is a federal crime. And some of the other, again, I think what I'm really going to be taking away today and always is that, again, having the conversations are important, right? Because having them in a preventative way helps us kind of really have how you step through this 4-step kind of framework for how we can talk to our kids when something serious happens, but also highlighting getting their permission and consent is important. We talk about that all the time, coming to the table together so our children feel just as empowered. But the thing that I'm taking away today is you are really dropping not only the resources, but strategies as well. Because I know in working with people, when you at least have a strategy, you can create a plan, and then you can take action, which feels very empowering, and so that you're not overwhelmed and feel stuck and don't know where to go. In the same area, my next question about this and scams in particular is something that a lot of us get on our phones are those tricky little text messages and those DMs, those direct messages asking for us to confirm information like our passwords or credit card information. Super convincing a lot of the times, right? So, parents, should they talk to their kids about those scams too? Is that helpful?
It's so helpful, and it's so funny because I got a text message this morning with a job offer from Warner Brothers that would pay me $7,000 a month to just do data entry at home. Like, I mean, how could you resist? All I have to do is call a number and share with them information so that they can compensate me, information about my bank account so that they can compensate me for a 3-day trial period. I mean, what a deal, right? And this is something I got via text message this morning. Um, so I think we get these messages all the time. And when we get them, it's important for us to, first of all, you and I was being very sarcastic there and joking with you, but of course, your instinct is to just like roll your eyes and delete them. But this is an opportunity. Save that until you see your kids, have them read through it and ask them what they think, and then go through the analysis process with them. So when they're reading it, are there misspellings or typos? Who is it from? Is it a recognizable number or account? Also, if we think about the nature of that, are job offers made via like a text message where people aren't already familiar with one another, or are job offers often made through more formal means? Um, if you were to get a message like that from a government agency or some other more sort of formal communication, what might that look like? Would it be a text message or a DM? Um, Sometimes formal communications are via email, and so emails can be especially tricky as compared to like DMs or text messages that tend to be more kind of casual communications. So analyzing emails, if there's a link in an email, not clicking it, looking really carefully at the email address that it's from, both the part of the email address that's before the @ symbol and the part that's after the @ symbol are really important. In particular, the part that's after the @ symbol will sometimes just have a couple of letters transposed. So if you read it quickly, it looks like it's legitimate, but upon more inspection, it's not. Practicing those analyses are really important. If after reading it, it still looks pretty legit, but there's something up and it just doesn't feel right. Copying and pasting most of the message into a Google search and seeing what comes up is a great way to check to see if it's a scam. Because a lot of times you're not the first one to receive it and it's been reported in some other way and people have copied and pasted it elsewhere. And so you can check that way without having to click the link within the email, because that's kind of where the danger lies. Once you click a link, even if you haven't entered any information, the fact that you clicked it shares information with the website that you've directed your device to go to using the internet. When it comes to, so that's emails and text messages. When it comes to DMs or direct messages on social media platforms or gaming platforms, this is often where the interactions start that can escalate and lead to sextortion, like we were talking about earlier. Because this isn't just like a text message from a kind of a random number that's automated or that's a bot, or an email that's from some kind of like bot or automated service. Oftentimes the DMs, they can be from bots, but most of the times they're from actual people who will keep pinging you and being like, how come you haven't responded to me? I'm a real person. I really want to get to know you. I really like this picture that's posted on your Instagram, or I saw your last TikTok that you posted. Or I think your avatar is really awesome in this game. I really like the outfit that you've picked. Or you're a really amazing player. Like, I'd like to learn some skills from you, or I'd like to play with you on this game, so that they'll be able to customize their messages to you because they are a real person. This is where it can get a little bit trickier, especially with adolescents and teens, because they know that when we talk to them about, like, what will you do if this happens, if someone messages you that you don't know, they know that the right answer that adults want to hear is, oh, I'll just block them. And they think if they say that answer, then the adults will stop talking to them about it and the awkward conversation will be over. The truth is that some of the messages they probably will block because their instincts will tell them right away that it's not good. But some of the messages they'll be just genuinely curious about, and they're going to answer at first to kind of test the waters. So if when you have this conversation with your child, they say, oh, don't worry, mom, I always just block it, or don't worry, dad, I block it. I would never talk to a stranger. Um, it's important to kind of continue the conversation and say, well, what if it's someone who claims to be a friend of a friend? They just live in a nearby town. Or what if the name sounds familiar because you've sort of heard of them from someone and you want to check them out. So they're not really a stranger, but you don't actually know them. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. What if you do start talking to them? I think it's important to sort of play that out so that they are able to imagine what it would be like to get to know a stranger via a direct message and figure out how to extract themselves when they get to the point where they're uncomfortable. Um, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just a matter of letting your child imagine the possibilities so that you're acknowledging that, they're not perfect. They are not always going to hit that block button. And to be honest, maybe they don't need to always hit that block button because maybe it is really a friend of a friend who's also the same age. And we need to kind of acknowledge the reality of those circumstances and just have that ongoing conversation with our kids.
Yeah, I love it. And you really talked about the ongoing conversation in this part particular, continuing the conversation. And one of my jobs in life is just to be is to ask the questions, but asking the questions kind of drills us down into like the critical thinking. So I like that you displayed role modeling in a different type of way, not just what we do in the day to day that our kids see us doing that create those impressions, but playing out the scenarios, the what ifs this happens, how would you respond? Like, let's have this conversation together so that I think it makes it a little bit less scary, so that if you see those flags, you know how to, again, taking action. So, and also I think some nuance here is that you're really, when we're face to face with people in person, it's easier to kind of spot the things or ask the questions or know things. But in the online, I think a big lesson here is not taking everything at face value, asking more questions, looking at patterns and whatnot. And so I love that. And with the question before with not even question before, but like, should we teach our kids about scams? You really point out the opportunity for teachable moments, because in every work setting, IT is always teaching us what not to click on and testing us. But we can then, again, take that information back into our homes. And where you particularly pointed out, like teens, we have a Be Internet Awesome program that really talks about, again, coming to the table and having those conversations around what do healthy digital habits look like. And so I think, again, being informed is very empowering, so that you know how to tackle a situation before it happens or as it's happening. So I appreciate you. Um, I think you tap into something else here, and I hear a little bit of resilience coming up. Is that what I'm hearing a little bit?
Yeah, well, and that's what I was kind of thinking is we've talked a lot about the preventative approaches to a lot of these things, but even with all the prevention, something might happen, unfortunately. So how do you, I think, what are some of the questions that we have about resilience when and if something unfortunate happens with our kids?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've all been in this situation, right? Where we see our friends, we see coworkers, acquaintances posting online about getting together without us, right? So we've all felt it. We've been there, kids, adults alike, that twinge of FOMO, those emotions that flare up when we feel like we're not being included. We might, in fact, feel excluded. So, how can we help our kids with this common fear of FOMO, which can be an unfortunate experience, but I think there's a positive to this. How can we help our kids with that?
Yeah, yeah. First, when it happens to you, because it happens to all of us, notice in that moment how you feel, like physically, how do the feelings feel in your body? Um, Notice what your thoughts are. Like, what are you thinking about those people? What are you thinking about their intentions? What assumptions are you making? And notice how your thoughts change as as you surf the emotion. So when you have that first initial intense emotion, you may have certain thoughts, and then you may kind of talk yourself through it, as the emotions fade and ease. um, Decide, are you going to talk to the people who were involved directly to let them know about, like, hey, I wish you'd invited me, like, or are you going to let it go? And what helps you make that decision? Because every relationship and every situation is different. Once you've had a time to notice your emotions and thoughts, to manage your own thoughts and feelings, consider telling your kids about that experience and even showing them the picture of the people who got together as like evidence of what you saw and how you felt. Adults often don't want to burden kids with our emotions. And the truth is that that's really appropriate in many cases. It's not their job to help us manage our emotions. It's our job as adults to do that. But once the emotions are over, telling them about the experience and then modeling how to navigate those challenging emotions is a really important aspect of parenting that we can do to help our kids sort of strengthen their abilities. And we shouldn't bring this on our kids when we're in the heat of the moment, but we can talk to them about it afterward. And then we can say, when this happens, remember this conversation and know that, number one, you can come to me in the heat of the moment, so you can just vent when those emotions are really hot and you're really feeling them, because oftentimes just getting them out is really helpful. And number two, when you're trying to decide what to do, I'm happy to talk through it with you, because I've been through it. And I would never reach, and you can say to your kid, I would never reach out to the people, to, those kids or the parents of those kids directly. I'm just here as like a sounding board for you to decide what you're going to do, because these are your relationships to manage, not mine to manage for you. I think that approach, number one, it teaches emotional management, which is really important. It also normalizes the experience so they don't feel like no one understands them or they're alone. And it also makes it okay for them to come to you when it happens. And as a parent, that's all we want. We just want our kids to feel like they can come to us and that we're a safe space.
I feel like those are the best moments too. Like when you appreciate those moments afterwards, like, yes, they came to me with the tough stuff too. And I like it. I'm going to say relatable role modeling. We have being teachers, we have teachers inside the school, but I love this kind of what I'm hearing about the parents feeling empowered and kind of being the teachers in the homes when it comes to we go through this stuff too, and really being able to normalize emotions. It's okay to feel, asking them how they feel, but yeah, it also happens to us, right? So again, I think bringing those teachable moments, like you're not the only one, and being able to step through it is great. And again, just more of those positive, practical, proactive conversations with ourselves first, and then maybe with our friends, but especially at home, so that we can come up with the strategy together. So I love that theme. um, Carrie, how do you think that we help our kids move forward after an incident of something like bullying, right, in a group text or in the comments of a social media post, maybe even in the chat again of the video game, in a video game, especially when you have to interact now with those individuals who are involved at school or other situations, um, in their in-person lives?
The truth is that bullying that happens online most often involves groups of kids that know each other in person. And so, as someone who's like an assistant principal at a school, and I've worked in high schools for almost 25 years, I'd love to tell you that what happens outside of school stays outside of school, but it just doesn't. It flows in, and so I unfortunately have a lot of experience helping kids work through these feelings, and also sometimes working with parents who are helping their kids manage it well, and sometimes parents who are trying to figure out how to manage their own emotions when they see their kid in pain, emotional pain after kind of a bullying incident. Um, so I call this strategy kind of play the tape forward, and it's very similar to the kind of strategy session I talked about having with your kid if they get kind of DM'd or messaged by someone they don't know, except in this case, you're having them practice the interactions with the people that they're going to see in real life after something has happened online. So ask your child, the bullying incident is over, it's subsided. Maybe even the school has helped manage like consequences and communications with families and it's over, but your child's feelings are not back to normal. They still are on edge and they're feeling like they're walking on eggshells and they're not sure what's going to happen next. Ask them, okay, I know you're nervous. What's the absolute worst thing that could happen? Like, say it out loud. And because what we think in our brains about the worst thing that can happen, once we say it out loud, sometimes, number one, sometimes it sounds ridiculous, like that would never happen. It's just the stories we tell ourselves can be really extreme. Or number two, sometimes when we say it out loud, it's like a relief, like someone else knows what I'm thinking, and that thought is not trapped in my head anymore. So allow them to say it out loud. And then just say, okay, once they've said it, say, how would that feel if that actually happened? Like, how would you feel? And let them try to imagine what that would feel like. And then you can say, what do you think you would do if you were feeling that way and that happened? Would you talk to someone? Is there someone that you can talk to either at school or after school or before school or on the bus or, wherever they might be, if that happens in that moment? Um, and then where could you get support? And the really important question at the end, once they've played through the whole scenario, is what can I do? So that if this worst case scenario happens, that I have like done everything that I can to support you. And they might not know what you could do. So you could offer suggestions. Are they okay with you proactively letting know like a school counselor or a teacher that they're nervous so that the adults can just kind of keep an eye out for them? Are they okay with maybe reaching out to them after the school day is over to be like, how did it go today? I love you. I'm thinking of you, right? You don't want to text them during the school day, but afterwards, like, so that they know that someone's going to check in with them and make sure that they're okay. And that's a comfort. There's lots of things that you could suggest so that you're not directly getting involved, but you're helping them kind of smooth the pathway so that they know you have as kind of an emotional safety net. Also, role playing is a great strategy. So if there's certain conversations they're worried are going to happen, they could tell you, like, this is what I think this person's going to say in the cafeteria at lunchtime when none of the adults around and won't hear them. And then you can say, okay, if they say that, what are the potential things you could say in response? Or do you feel comfortable walking away? Where would you go? Like, role play, and then say, okay, do you want to try this out? Like, you can be the one to say it and I'll be you. Or I can be the one to say it and you can be you, just so you can practice what it feels like to hear someone say that to you, right? And let them role play that with you. And it's going to feel really awkward, but at least they're used to hearing someone say it. And they're used to saying the response, so they've said it before. And when they say it the second time, they can say it with a little more confidence and a little more presence. Um, all of those are really helpful things for kids to practice.
I like that. Play the tape forward. It again, because in hitting on that role modeling, a couple of programs that come to my mind on the end, uh, come to mind on my end, is that we have a Create with Kindness program, a Build Up with Belong program. But the important part here, these programs really start to bring teens and parents to the table to have more than just the conversation. So I think these are really great. I think this is a really great strategy, and these are really great pathways to introduce even more of that role playing through the scenarios. Because again, when you have a plan, when you've kind of walked through it a couple of times, sure, it feels awkward in that moment, but you have a safe space to do it in. And then again, if this happens like in real life, it's already built in that muscle memory a little bit, that like, okay, I know how to tackle this. And it's not always going to be perfect, and it does look different for everybody. But I really appreciate that. Again, you're really laying down the strategies, because we know the conversation is always important. But again, how can we engage and bring this one step further? So I always thank you. You're giving me a lot of strategies to bring to the parents and the leaders this year, and I love it.
Thanks, Mikki. I wanted to mention too, a lot of these strategies that I shared at ConnectSafely.org, we have a guides tab. And if you click on it, we have a guide to sextortion. So if you can't remember kind of the steps that I mentioned, just anyone can go and click on that guide, click on sextortion, and read to review. Same thing with when it comes to cyberbullying or scams or predators. And if folks go to safer.connectsafely.org, we have specifically lesson plans for teachers that cover each of these topics that folks could use during the week of Safer Internet Day this week in classrooms, and parents can use them for inspiration for conversations at home too. So, Mikki, it's my understanding that we actually have some parents who have let us know that they have some questions. And so we're going to do a little bit of a flash round. So I'm going to call on our first parent, Alex.
Hi, thank you so much. This is great. So my question is around AI. It seems like everywhere you go, you hear about AI making our everyday lives easier. And if my children pose a similar argument about homework, should I prevent them from using generative AI to help with their homework?
Yeah, great question. Firstly, I use AI literally every day to do my job. It's such a helpful tool. So, some examples in my work as a teacher and a school administrator, I use it to come up with wrong answers for multiple choice questions. So, a lot of times when I'm making an assessment, coming up with the questions and the answers, coming up with the question and then the correct answer is easy. Coming up with believable but wrong answers actually takes a great deal of brain power. And that's like one less thing that I have to do. I'll sometimes use it to create first drafts of documents that I have to produce. Of course, I always edit and make it my own and make it sound like it's my voice. Predictive AI is even built into our email now. I don't know if you've noticed when you type your email, it'll predict the next phrase that you're going to say. Sometimes I love that. Sometimes I find it annoying. It depends on what I'm trying to do. And so our kids are seeing all of these uses because they're emailing too, right? And AI is built into a lot of the platforms that they use. I know AI is built into Snapchat. The teens at my house have talked about how they're using that. And so I think it's not realistic for us to kind of tell them not to use AI, but there are some ethics to where using AI is helpful and where it's actually interfering with the type of learning that the teacher wants the student to engage in. So you can work with your kid to check the teacher's syllabus or grading policy. A lot of times they have it posted on their class webpage, to check to see if they have a policy around AI use. And if they don't, and your child is tending to want to use AI for certain tasks, it's totally okay to co-write an email with your child and say, hey, they're using AI to help them with this aspect of the writing process. What's your take on that? Could we chat a little bit about it? And you could express your opinion. Like, I think it's okay for this reason, but I want to make sure we're on the same page. I think that partnership is really important and helpful. And I think AI is a real thing, and it's a technology that we all are going to have to develop the skills to use. So it's a great question, and teachers and parents and kids, we're all learning it together right now. So great question. Thank you so much, Alex. We have another question from Purnima.
Hi, I'm Purnima from New York. I'm the Western Region PTA Director. And my question is communication with schools, right? Reminds me about the way our kids type in their text messages. So, whose job is it to teach them more formal styles of communication? Is it schools or parents? And will our methods of emailing even be relevant when they're adults?
Yeah, Purnima, great question. Who knows, right? It's really hard to predict. I think we all are using a mix of video chatting, old-fashioned audio phone calls, text messaging, email, and we still use paper snail mail. And we all have kind of norms where we know when and when not to use each of those things, but the norms are always changing. And the truth is that the norms that teens and adolescents have for when to use those things are different than ours as adults. So one thing is, to answer the initial question, whose job is it? I think it's both. I think it's the school's job and it's our job. I know in our school, we specifically spend time teaching our middle schoolers how to write emails to adults. And I actually, our sixth graders are doing a research project right now that will result in a podcast. And they have to consult an expert somewhere on campus about their topic. And I'm the expert for two of the sixth grader groups. And so I just got emails from these two groups of sixth graders yesterday in my inbox. And they were like, good afternoon, Dr. Gallagher. We're doing a research project on this and we'd like to interview you. Here are some times we have open. Please let us know what works for you. And it was signed from these boys. And they're like these 12-year-old boys. And it was just lovely to receive this email. And I know that teacher took the time as part of that research project to teach them how to reach out to an expert and ask for an opportunity to speak with them. And that's part of the process. At the same time, at home, my children have had questions about homework or not understood things or wanted to let a teacher know they were going to be absent for some kind of planned thing that was coming up. And I've said, you should write the email to your teacher and you can CC me on it, but the email should come from you and not from me. So let's practice that. And so I've taught my children how to write an email to their teacher, from the parent side. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think any adults have the opportunity to do this. The other thing is, Mikki, because you work with kids too, so you might see this. I find that the way that my children are 16 and 13 right now, the way that they phrase their text messages when they're texting their peers is very different than the way that they phrase their text messages when they text message me. And they have learned to kind of code switch and know the difference between the two because they know it's not acceptable for them to text me the way they text their friends because I hold them to a different standard. But if they texted their friends the way they texted me, their friends would be like, whoa, Miss Fancy, like, what's up with that? So I think teaching them that it's okay to have those different standards, just knowing when it's time to switch is a skill that they're going to need to have.
Yeah, Kerry, if I can add quick, you reminded me of one of my high school teachers because we all have used the word ain't. The word ain't isn't really a word, right? We've heard that at some point. But I remember having that conversation. Like, I talk to my friends a lot differently than like how I'm supposed to maybe talk to adults. And that's informed me as a teacher, is one of the questions I ask when it comes to any kind of communications. Okay, who are we talking to? And how do we want to be seen? Because I empower my students to be their own CEOs. So really sitting in that seat of like, what kind of impression are you trying to make? And there is a way that you can use your voice, but still sound maybe more professional down to informal or casual. So you're bringing me back to my days with Mr. O'Hagan. Whenever I said ain't, he said ain't is not a word. And I just remembered that I was in a professional classroom.
Purnima, great question. Thank you. I'm sure we can all think of great examples. I appreciate it. I think we have a question from Rocio.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Rocio Kuhl from Freeman Council PTA in California, and I have teenagers, so my question is, my teens are not consuming news from sources that are considered professional journalists, like TV or journalist websites, and instead are getting the news from TikTok. What are the implications of this in the long run?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think, Rocio, when it comes to the news and what news is, there's a lot of conversation around this right now, and even adults aren't agreeing about what is considered news and what isn't. And it's a tough one, and it's really controversial, but we shouldn't shy away from this with our kids. We think of professional journalism coming from established news organizations that have sort of news television programs or newspapers or online publications that you can kind of tell are researched and reported in a way that's meant to have as little bias as possible, although it's impossible to have zero bias, right? At the same time, the internet has made it possible for any of us to report what we're seeing in real time or to even express our opinion on events that we're seeing. And while my opinion matters to me and is important to like my family and the people I interact with, I am not a professional journalist in terms of like what a journalistic editorial is. So there isn't anything wrong with getting information from sources like a firsthand witness who's shooting footage and then posting it on TikTok or posting it on an Instagram reel. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's important to help our kids do what's called lateral reading, which means once you see or hear or read about something from the perspective of a regular citizen, it's important to also look for what are the professional journalists reporting on this, because they've had the opportunity to not just look at the witness experience, but interview experts, policymakers, and other people who can provide a more whole, informed perspective on all of the context that goes with that event. And, I think when teens will bring up in my class, like, hey, did you hear about this? Because they find it really engaging or controversial. A lot of times I'll say I did, and I'll start asking follow-up questions that I know they'll only know the answer to if they've done the lateral reading. And that's an opportunity to model the skill of once you see something, what do you do next to help you better understand it? And that's really what a good citizen does. And so, like I mentioned, I think seeing some of that news on TikTok or Instagram, I think it's a great starting place. If it gets them engaged, then by all means, start there. And then what do they do next? And that's what we want to encourage our kids to do. Thanks, Rocio. I really appreciate your question. I think we have a question from Erin as well.
Hi, Kerry. Hi, Mikki. My name is Erin, and I'm from South Dakota. And I'm a mom of 13-year-old twins. They're almost 14, and then a 10-year-old. So I no longer really have control over what they are watching on their screens. They pick it for themselves. And unfortunately, there are scary images of war violence and devastating fires, school shootings that are routinely on screens. They're hard for us to see, and our kids are seeing them too. Should parents be shielding kids from these images and videos?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's a really hard one because of the way screens are now so personalized and can come with us anywhere. It's no longer the case, right, Erin and Mikki, like the only screens that were in my house when I was a kid were the ones in like the family room, right? Or if you had a TV in your kitchen or something. It was very few people had screens in their sort of more private rooms in the home. And now it's like you don't even have to be in a private room. You can just put earbuds in and be on the couch with everybody else and watching your own content. So even if you're not showing the news on a TV in a family common space, it's likely that because as you mentioned, Erin, because your kids have access to the internet, they're able to see violent images or videos or hear about news that can be a little scary. I think the other thing to acknowledge is that schools are routinely having drills that ask kids to imagine what it would be like if there were an intruder in the school or if there were some kind of natural emergency or disaster. And that's something that, as in our generation, it was really just the fire drill and that was it. And it just didn't seem as sort of threatening or scary. It was kind of more imaginable and more feasible. So I think the first thing is, like we mentioned with sextortion, don't be afraid to be the one to bring it up. Because if we model that we're not afraid to talk about hard things to our kids, then they're going to know it's okay for them to bring up hard things to us later when they've done more thinking about it and they're just not sure. And a lot of times when we bring it up and we let them know by bringing it up that we're okay with talking about it, then they know that the adults have a plan and have thought about how to protect them. And that alone can make them feel better. And I have a 13-year-old too, so I definitely know exactly where you are. And it's a weird transition because they're becoming a little bit more private in their lives, and we're used to kind of when they're younger children knowing everything about who they talk to and what they're saying and what the conversations are. And now they have a little more privacy, and that's a transition for all of us. If you don't have like a place or a time where bringing up these hard conversations will be sort of natural or normal, or it'll be easy for your kids to like walk out of the room and up the stairs to their bedroom. I often use time in the car because they're kind of trapped. And because the way the seating is set up in cars, you're all facing the same way. So you don't have to make eye contact in the midst of that challenging conversation. So it somehow makes it a little bit easier because they can't run away and nobody has to look at each other in the eye. And so that tends to be the time where I bring up those challenging things.
And I just want to add, this is just great questions. I really take from this because, what I've seen with students and I hear when I'm around kids is like, you can do so much inside of your home, right? As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about my parents that love using the Smart Talk tool because there's actually a technology agreement that says like, we have to have our screens maybe in common places in the house so that people just know in general. But I always say like, what happens outside of the house? We're just in a world where there are billboards with things screaming across it and just exposed to so much more content in so many different ways. So again, outside of having the ongoing conversations at home, again, just being able to have real conversations and bringing it to the attention of the scariest stuff is the stuff we tend to stay away from the most. But I see in my students, they're the future advocates, and a lot of these things that impact their day to day, they're super curious about because they want to figure out how to make sense in a world that sometimes doesn't really make sense. But then I always find that they're really trying to be informed kind of in a positive way where they can think about like, well, what can I do to help solve this problem too? So I love the context of like, we shouldn't be scared to tackle, maybe some of the scarier topics, but with those preventative strategies in mind, because sometimes when you put light on the boogeyman in the closet, it's just kind of the coat hanging there, right? And it's a little less scary. So I really appreciate the question, but Kerry, the information that you really bring, because those are hard topics that parents ask about a lot.
Yeah, great metaphor about the coat and the boogeyman in the closet. I think once we speak it out loud, it becomes something that is okay then to speak out loud. So that's great. Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for that question. We have one last question in our speed round from Vanessa, and I'm excited to hear it.
My question is the topic that my parent friends and I are talking about most is screen time and headphones or earbuds. How much screen time is okay and how much is too much? And how do we convince our kids to stop walking around the house with one or both earbuds all of the time?
Yeah, a great question. And boy, can I relate to this. The first part of your question, like how much is okay and how much is too much. There isn't a magic number, and I really wish there was, because life for parents would be so much easier if there was. The truth is that we have to look at our kids' like whole lives, right? So if we think about their academic performance and their consistency there, if we think about their participation in sports or rehearsals or hobbies that they really love to do that don't involve screens, are they doing those things in a way that is healthy? And do they have enough physical activity when you count all of those things together? Do they have friendships where they're meeting with people in person really often? Are they asking you to help them set up times for them to visit their friends' houses or asking to have friends over? Um, are they getting enough sleep, right? Do they have enough sleep so that they have the energy to perform well in school, manage those friendships, participate in those rehearsals and sports that we talked about? When you balance all of that together, if they're doing all of that well with your help, if they want a little bit of time on their screens to watch a show or play a video game, that's okay, as long as everything else is sort of healthy and seems like it's the right combination for them. Know that that will also shift over time. There's different seasons during the year where their lives and patterns will change. Their lives are not the same every single day. So for instance, if you live in a part of the country where it gets really cold in the winter, that pattern might look different with screens simply because it's harder to go outside. If you live in a part of the country where the amount of sunlight is really short in the winter, that pattern may also change as a result of that. Also, the school year is really different than the summer in terms of their schedule. And so there might be some shifts there. If there's a shift and it feels like there's more screen time than you like, as long as it shifts back when that change of season or change of routine happens, then you're okay. So those are all things to consider, and just keeping an eye on it and talking to your kids about it while it's happening. If you're developing some concerns, I think it's all right. It's when they're starting to choose a screen over friendships that you know that they used to really care about, or choosing a screen over going to a sports practice that they used to really love, or choosing a screen over things that you just kind of, your kid, and that's when you want to maybe start having more intentional conversations with them. You may want to bring it to their pediatrician appointment that's coming up, and just kind of run it by other people to see what their thoughts are. There's nothing wrong with that. When it comes to earbuds, the second part of your question, such a good example. And so in terms of wearing earbuds around, all teenagers we know would just prefer to always have one or both earbuds in at all times. It's just kind of their default. And it's become the culture of teens for that to be the case. For them, they don't see anything wrong with having one earbud in and one earbud out, because they can hear what's going on around them, and they can still have kind of the background of their music going on. And music is a really important part of teen development. I know we all loved our music and they love theirs, and that's okay. That's great. But you have to have norms in your house that you're comfortable with. So admittedly, when I'm doing kind of chores around the house, like cooking dinner or folding laundry or doing dishes or whatever it might be, working out, a lot of times I do have my earbuds in, because I'm a consumer of podcasts and audiobooks and music. And if there's no one else around and I'm doing something that's kind of tedious, it helps make the task be a little more enjoyable. And so what used to happen is I would start one of those tasks. I would have my earbuds in, having a great time. And then my husband would walk in the room and start talking to me. And I would be like, oh, were you talking to me? And he would get so frustrated. And I imagine that's kind of what you're talking about, Vanessa, in your question, because he's like, I was talking to you and you had your earbuds in. And so after it happened a couple of times, in a moment where I wasn't on my earbuds, I said to him, look, I'm not doing this to frustrate you. It's just there was no one around when I put them in. So it makes the task more enjoyable. I just explained that to him. So I said, if I'm in the middle of something and you walk in the room and there's no one around, he can't see my ears because of my long hair. I said, just tap me on the shoulder and check. And so sometimes when he taps me on the shoulder to check, I'm like, no, I don't have earbuds in. Go ahead. And other times I'm like, oh, hang on. And I pull them out because he wants to talk to me. So we can have a very similar conversation with our kids and say, I know it's fine for you to have one earbud in and one out when you come in the kitchen for a snack, when you're in the middle of your homework, because you can hear. And I know your intention is to only have one in so that you can interact. But for me, what I feel like is I feel less important because you're only giving me half of your attention. That's kind of what it looks like. So even though that's not your intent, that's the impact it has on me. So this is what I would prefer instead. When you come in the kitchen for a snack, if there are people in the kitchen, you need to take the earbud out and greet me and make eye contact. And that is true for your siblings or, anyone else who's in the kitchen, your grandparents, whatever it might be. If there isn't anyone in the kitchen, keep your earbud in, grab your snack. That's totally fine. It's just honoring there's a different behavior when there's people around than there are when there are not people around. So that's one suggestion, but you can, adjust or calibrate that to what works best for your family. That's a great, real life question. And also, Vanessa, that's a question that we're asking in schools all the time. When is it okay for them to have earbuds in and when is it not? So thank you for that one. Well, Mikki, it's been so great to talk with you. I really appreciate you. The opportunity to kind of share our experiences as educators and people who care deeply about kids and parents and those relationships. It's always great to work with and speak to you. As I mentioned before, Mikki shared some of the great resources from PTA. Connect Safely has awesome resources. If you need to review any of these tips, you can go to ConnectSafely.org and tap on those guides. And also safer.ConnectSafely.org is specifically the portion of our website that's meant for Safer Internet Day. And there are some great specific resources just for these topics and just for in celebration of Safer Internet Day there. So I encourage you to go to safer.connectsafely.org. And Mikki, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, from this whole conversation, I can hear my dad in my ear saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And what was really refreshing about this conversation, technology is always going to be evolving. And I just remember having some of these same conversations at home around the floor model TV, my cassette player with the headphones, one ear on, one ear off. And it's really just the technology is changing and it's just happening a little bit faster. But the refreshing part is just like, you know what? We were having these conversations in my home too. And I think it gives us all a chance to revisit those family values that we're connected to and how we role model those in all the ways. So I just want to say, I know I mentioned some of our programs throughout the conversation, like the Smart Talk, great for starting the talk. We have Ready Tech Go, Be Internet Awesome, Create with Kindness, Build Up and Belong, Screen Smart. But all these programs, I look at them as being stackable. They're all free resources. People could go and download these today, but they work for different age groups, but you really can start the conversation at any time. And we like to say starting it earlier is better. So I just want to highlight that National PTA's PTA Connected Initiatives provides these, again, free turnkey education and programming for PTA leaders, for parents and families to use locally, again, to educate on all these topics and more that we talked about today. So you can visit pta.org/connected to learn more about these resources and access them so that you can start the conversation at home. So just thank you, as always, for the conversation and bringing some really good strategies on the road to talk to our leaders about.
Thank you, Mikki. It's been such a pleasure. To close us for today, Connect Safely would truly like to thank our supporters, Google, Meta, TikTok, Amazon Kids, Discord, Roblox, OpenAI, Snap, and of course, National PTA.
And also National PTA would like to thank our generous PTA Connected supporters from AT&T, Meta, Norton, Google, YouTube, TikTok, Discord, and of course, Connect Safely for the wonderful collaborative partnership on Safer Internet Day.
Thank you for joining us tonight, everybody.